Hello, and welcome back to the last part of our 8-part series, Lisbon, Portugal to Copenhagen, Denmark, aboard the Silver Sea Silver Spirit. In Part 8, we're going to cover one more day at sea, then Skagen, Denmark, disembark in Copenhagen, Denmark, and spend one more day walking about that city. But wait, that's not all. We also have the official dining and drinking guide coming up, as well as a short entertainment guide that I'll roll into our Silver Spirit ship tour, and then the pros and cons, ups and downs of this particular voyage. But let's get started with our last day at sea before disembarking in Copenhagen. And the important thing to do on a day at sea, of course, is to peruse those chronicles looking for things to do. We marked up a few, knowing full well that we would probably not get to all of them, and then went on with our day. And to start, we had our Silver Spirit brunch. It's so big it crosses over 2 different restaurants, Atlantide and Indochine. And as before, it was well done. And after dinner that night, we went to the Venetian Lounge to watch cruise director Grace Cottle entertain us with some opera of all things. And while opera is not really my thing, Grace has a lovely voice, and the evening was very entertaining. And as the last notes faded and the standing O subsided, it was time for bed and get ready for next day's port of call. And the next morning, we arrived in Skagen, Denmark. Skagen would be our last port of call before disembarking in Copenhagen. Skagen is the northernmost point in Denmark with a population of 7,400. We started with an early shore excursion entitled Skagen Highlights. First stop was Gijon for a quick ride on the sandworms. This is the northernmost point in Denmark, and it is at the confluence of the Baltic Sea and the North Sea. You can literally walk out on a spit of sand until one foot is in the Baltic Sea, and the other is planted in the North Sea. North Sea? Baltic Sea. North Sea, Baltic Sea. As you wander out just as far as you can, it becomes sort of the idea of stepping out onto the edge of the world, or at least the edge of Denmark. Then it was back on the sandworm train, where we would be turned loose for a short walk around the beach and the area. This area is one of the tourist highlights for Skagen and has a museum, a gift shop, a restaurant, and some old World War II German bunkers. The Germans built more than 300 bunkers up the coastline of Denmark to repel an Allied invasion that never really developed. And according to our tour guide, George, the German soldiers just lazed about, enjoying a 4-year vacation away from the front. The bunkers remain as a history lesson of the German occupation. Here's a bit more information on the area. Hit pause if you're truly interested in reading it. If you read either Dutch, English, or German, you're in luck. The bunkers are still here. After all, how do you get rid of a bunker? And there is a pretty good concentration of those bunkers in this area. And as you look down the beach, you can see that confluence of the two seas once more with the sandworm standing on the dunes. Interestingly, Denmark has to replace their lighthouses every 100 years, give or take. Denmark is losing about 1 meter per year on the eastern side of the peninsula, but gains almost 8 meters per year on the west side. The country is actually slowly growing. That's not a problem for the Danes, but the landscape changes rapidly enough that the positions of the lighthouses, or navigational markers, that within 50 to 100 years down the road may no longer be in a meaningful position and must be replaced. And as we walked back, we passed this spot, which is a grave for famous Danish poet Holger Drachmann, sitting right here on the beach. And with that, it was back on the bus, and this time our stop was in Old Skagen. Here we stopped near the old city center of Skagen and took a look at some of the architectural details of the houses and hotels. George apologized and informed us that some of the buildings were only, quote-unquote, 250 years old. One of the stories our tour guide George told us was he explained why Denmark is consistently ranked as one of the happiest places on earth. This is despite the government taking 58% of your earnings, even from pensioners, and there's also a healthy 25% VAT added to almost everything. If you want to buy a car, please do. Just be aware that Denmark makes no cars, and there is a whopping 180% tax, tariff, or whatever you want to call it, on every vehicle that comes into the country. To some, that may sound like communism or socialism, but it works for Denmark. He equated it to our life aboard the cruise ships. You pay a lot to get on board, but once you're there, everything is covered. School, healthcare, utilities, and in the case of older folks, housing in old age centers and full-time care are all covered. It started raining fairly heavily, so we retreated to the bus and made our way to the next stop, the Buried Church. The church was built between 1050 and 1250 to serve multiple communities in the area. It was originally a Roman Catholic church and was later converted to Danish Protestant. The church took over 100 years to complete, but the location and strong winds in the area carried enough sand that the parishioners had to literally dig out the sand from the front doors each week to just open the church. Eventually, the church was abandoned to the sands in the 1500s when a new church was built in a more stable location. The only thing that can be seen now is the top 60 feet, give or take, of the bell tower. The entire church, churchyard, and graveyards lie consumed by the ever-blowing sands 30 plus feet below the surface. This area is still used for more than just tourism, as occasionally they will have concerts or plays with the church as the backdrop. And as the rain came down, it was time to retreat once more to the bus and make our way back to the Silver Spirit. So what did we think of our excursion Skagen highlights? Well, value-wise, since it was an included excursion, it was good. Accuracy of the tour description was very good. All scheduled stops were made. The time allotted was almost enough. We could have used another half hour or so to explore the bunkers and the beach a little bit more. Our tour guide George was absolutely wonderful. He gave us most of our information on the bus, never really intruding on our sightseeing. No food on this trip. And our overall experience was pretty darn good. And would I recommend this excursion to a friend? Yes, I would. This excursion was rated moderate activity, and that was pretty much accurate, as it was really up to you just how much energy you expended, or didn't, based on what you wanted to do. Once back on the Silver Spirit, it was time for a little lunch, so we raced upstairs. Enjoyed a little tuna gnocchi, and it was barbecue day in the buffet, followed by a little pudding and a selection of the many and varied desserts on display. So now it was downstairs at a much more sedate pace. And with the rain having subsided somewhat, we decided it was time to hop back on the shuttle bus and head back into the new town. New Town Skagen looks amazingly like Old Town Skagen. The number of restaurants, hotels, and pubs initially feels to be far too many for a small town of 7,400. That is, until you add the number of tourists and summer residents that swarm Skagen in the summer months of June, July, and August. At that time, cruise ships and tourists from other parts of Europe and Scandinavia dump up to 50,000 tourists and temporary residents on the small city every day. And they need to be fed, and apparently they like American food. There's an American restaurant with American ribs, American burgers, American steaks, pork burgers, hot dogs, and a pharmacy where you can get cures for the indigestion of it all, as well as the many shops where you can shop to your heart's content, or stop and get a luxury burger and fish, or just enjoy the city and people watching. There are ice cream shops everywhere. Asian restaurants. Get yourself a commemorative t-shirt or that perfect Lego gift. Stop and have a pizza at Mama's. I saw this bag I wanted to take home but was not allowed to. Or on your way back out, stop and get a waffle. Or take in some rock and roll as part of the nightlife. Right next to this incredibly busy business district is a residential district, calm and still removed from the hustle and bustle, just steps away. Back on board the Silver Spirit, we changed for dinner and got ready for the crew parade and Motown show at 6 o'clock in the Venetian Lounge. First up was a message from our captain, followed by the crew parade with a good representation from all the various crew positions. This was recognition that the crew needed and deserved. They did a marvelous job. And sadly, that was it. Our trip was coming to an end. The next morning, we would disembark bright and early in Copenhagen. So basically, right after the show, it was time to get back to the room and put the final touches on the packing, set the suitcases out, and get ready for tomorrow's disembarkation. And while today was just another day on the Silver Spirit for some, today it was disembarkation for us. We had arranged to stay on the ship just as long as we could because we had made private arrangements for transport and for our hotel. So stepping off the ship, we made our way down to here and called an Uber for our ride to the hotel, the 4 Points Flex by Sheraton, a Marriott hotel. This hotel was, as most Marriott properties, clean and organized, and in this case, very Scandinavian in its design and simplicity. The room and the bathroom were simple to the extreme, that's a closet on the left side, and typical of hotel rooms at this level, no air conditioning, and utilitarian to the extreme. But that's okay. I show you the room now, although we were not allowed to check in right away, but there was a locker for our luggage, so we were able to dump that, and we went for a walk. First, we checked out the neighborhood around the hotel. It looked interesting. Churches, other hotels, cows. Very unique and interesting shopping opportunities. Literally steps away from souvenirs and toys. Heavy metal and express trains as we traveled by the main train station, festooned with the now obligatory graffiti. Continuing on, we walked past the world-famous Tivoli Gardens amusement park. It was so early, it was just now getting ready to open. Continuing on, we passed interesting street art, lackluster fountains, and several silent pubs. Now, before you think all this walking was aimless, it was not. Our first goal was this area, that according to the map should lead us into a major shopping street. And so it did. So greeted by 7-Eleven and the home of the Whopper, we entered the street to find tempting-looking bakeries, and shops of every description. More fountains. And no, that's not a coffee kiosk, although you could get your coffee there. It is primarily a beer garden. So continuing on, we made it to one of our first points of interest, Christiansborg Palace. The present building, and the third with this name, is the last in a series of successive castles and palaces constructed on the same site, since the first castle was erected in 1167. Since the early 15th century, the various buildings have served as the base of the central administration, and until 1794, the principal residence of the Danish kings, and after 1849 as the seat of Parliament. Today it is the only governmental building in the world to house the three main branches of democratic government, the Danish Parliament, the Supreme Court, and the Ministry of State. Continuing on and winding our way around the confusing streets of Copenhagen, we carried on. And while we saw these guys on their way for the changing of the guard at Amalienborg Palace, we never did find the palace itself. But now thinking I had a bead on at least Rosenborg Castle, we continued on to what we thought initially were the King's Gardens at Rosenborg Palace. It wasn't. It was the Copenhagen Botanical Gardens, sharing land with the Natural History Museum The museum and gardens are located on land which was once part of Copenhagen's fortifications. We enjoyed about an hour of strolling around the gardens, exploring the main walkways and the hidden footpaths of the gardens. Join us as we wander about. On an edge of the garden, we found this neat-looking old building with no indication as to what it was, so I strolled up to the front door in an effort to find out what it was used for. Well, it was the Pioneer Center for Artificial Intelligence. With this, either a groundskeeper's storage building or a deluxe outhouse, I really don't know. Just down the street from the Botanical Gardens, we did find Rosenborg Castle or Palace and took the time to stroll the King's Gardens. Leaving the King's Garden, we started back through a commercial area and found, hey, this lovely place. So in we walked with eyes alight and started to browse. This was new and struck my eye right away. So we loaded up on some truffles and Dubai chocolate. And 20 minutes later, and $123 lighter, we were lugging our chocolate booty through the streets of Copenhagen and continuing our trek toward the hotel. Well, several false turns and over 21,000 steps and 10.1 miles later, we staggered into the 4 Points Flex by Sheraton and made it to our room. We almost immediately stepped out, found a place to grab a bite to eat, made our way back to the hotel, checked out what our crazy neighbors were up to, and then crashed. Well, the next morning we were up bright and early, went downstairs for the included breakfast, which was nicely done. And thus fortified, we called our Uber and went to the airport. Getting into the airport in Copenhagen was easy peasy. Getting through the airport, well, not so much. We found the American Airlines ticket counter easily enough, gave them our check-in bags, and headed towards security where we found this. I'm so happy that we went early because this took us almost 45 minutes to get through this line and past security. Now we finally see the light at the end of the tunnel, and that's passport control. Making it through security, we went up to the Eventide Lounge, which was a nice relaxing space with plenty of seating, lots of beer, wine, and booze, but since it was 10 o'clock in the morning, didn't really imbibe that much, and some okay food, rather unappetizing looking and totally bland and unappealing in flavor. But soon enough, we were on our Boeing 787-8, and luckily this time we scored business class, where we could settle in and stretch out a bit as we winged our way across the Atlantic toward our first stop of Philadelphia. The seats in AA business class are comfortable with plenty of room to move around in, and this time dinner was actually pretty darn good, with her mains being fish and mine being, well, a short rib. Actually, pretty tasty this time. Cap it off with AA's signature sundae, sit back with a bit of wine in hand, and it was time to chill out, watch a movie or two before landing in Philadelphia, changing planes, and making our way home. Well, that was it. Home again, home again. After 29 days of travel, it was good to be home. Stay tuned for my upcoming series on the Silver Sea, Silver Spirit. Please like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell to be kept up to date with new videos as they drop. New videos coming up are the Silver Spirit Ship Tour, the Dining and Drink Guide, Entertainment Guide, and the pros and cons, ups and downs of this particular cruise. Please check out some of our other content. Comments and suggestions are always welcome, so stay tuned for more. And as always, safe and happy travels from T's Cruise and Travel Muse.